Speaking in front of the White House, speaking on the ellipse, the same spot Donald Trump incited an insurrection on January 6, Vice President Kamala Harris warned that world leaders view Donald Trump as an easy mark. Harris said leaders like Vladimir Putin and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un are rooting for Trump to win this election. She said, quote, voters are not a vessel for the schemes of wannabe dictators. Harris warned that if Trump returned to the Oval Office, he would push for a nationwide abortion ban. Trump campaign spokesperson Caroline Leavitt said after the vice president's speech, quote, Kamala Harris is lying, name-calling, and clinging to the past to avoid admitting the truth. The migrant crime crisis, sky-high inflation, and raging world wars are the results of her terrible policies. Let's examine those words, shall we? Kamala Harris is lying. Donald Trump has never done that. Name-calling? Donald Trump has never done that. The migrant crime crisis? Well, that would be an example of Donald Trump lying. Sky-high inflation? That would be an example of Donald Trump lying. We're about to see gas below $3 a gallon. And raging world wars. Plural? Okay. Meanwhile, ballots were set on fire in Washington and Oregon, but I'm optimistic. I really am. I'm not sleeping. I just know everything is going to be okay. I know that Donald Trump is going to accept his defeat, and we're all going to live happily ever after because I watch CNN, and CNN provides a public service. They could report the news, but why do that when you can have 5 people sitting around telling us the most important issues of the day?
You're called an anti-Semite more than anyone else's table. Yeah. And people will sit there and, no, by me. I never called you an anti-Semite. Okay. I mean, I'm not sitting here saying
I'm a supporter of the Palestinians, so I'm used to it.
Yeah, I hope your beeper doesn't go off. The thing is that...
Did you just say I should die?
You should not.
No,
did you just say I should be killed?
No, I did not say that. No, I did not say that.
Hold on.
Did your guest just say I should be killed on live TV?
I said I hope you're...
Let me just stop.
You said you hope my beeper doesn't go off.
Because you said I'm a big supporter
of the Palestinians.
Hamas?
Guys, let me stop.
Palestinians.
Are you?
Am I what? No, of course I'm not.
Palestinians
Then I apologize.
Are you a racist, violent person inciting violence against me?
Ryan,
that's disgusting.
that is completely.
No, I apologize.
Good job, CNN. Let's have first block say the Muslim guy should be blown up.
I apologize.
On TV.
Don't say then I apologize. You literally.
I thought he said Hamas. I apologize.
You didn't think I said Hamas. I said I supported Palestinian rights.
Yes, I did.
Why? Because when you hear
What's funny is Rudy Giuliani said this yesterday, so you're a great guest to be here to defend Rudy Giuliani.
I wasn't going to entertain nonsense today, and so at this point,
this is what we're in now. This is America in 2024.
Here's what I will say.
Forget the racism.
That's right.
I should die.
I didn't say that. You should die.
What does beeper mean? Don't give me your fake ignorance.
I did not say you should die.
Why did you say with my beeper?
What did you mean?
What did you mean by the beeper?
So what did you mean?
What did you mean by the beeper? No, you didn't. You said, I hope your beeper doesn't go off.
Ryan, stop talking.
At least have the guts to support your racist comment.
Hang on.
I'm so sorry.
Gotta bring it back.
This is why yesterday's rally was disgusting.
Don't call us Nazis, but I'm going to threaten the brown guy as a terrorist and kill him.
Because I didn't ever say Donald Trump was Hitler.
I feel informed. I feel better because I watched that. I know what issues to pay attention to. This is the mop-up for October 30th, 2024. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for finding me. The election is a week from yesterday. Please go to shopdavidfeldman.com and buy worthless crap that you don't need, like my worst case scenario mug. Former President George W. Bush said he has no intention of endorsing any candidate in next week's election. Unlike his vice war criminal Dick Cheney, George W. Bush will not speak out against Donald Trump because George W. Bush is all about spreading democracy in the Middle East, just not here at home. His daughter, however, Barbara Bush, has been quietly working for Kamala Harris in Pennsylvania. In an exclusive interview with People magazine, the 42-year-old grand war criminal of President George Herbert Walker Bush, said it was inspiring to join friends and meet voters with the Harris Waltz campaign in Pennsylvania this weekend. I'm hopeful they'll move our country forward and protect women's rights. Thank you, Barbara Bush. Thank you. It's all hands on deck inside the Democratic Party. Former President Bill Clinton spent Tuesday in Western Pennsylvania as he tried to get the blue-collar vote in towns like McKeesport and Greensburg. Bruce Springsteen and Barack Obama packed 10,000 people into a Temple University auditorium in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Monday night. Last night, Michelle Obama held a rally in Atlanta, Georgia, encouraging young people to vote next week and to vote in every future election. She's been on a tear telling the truth about Donald Trump, reminding us he's a slumlord, a convicted felon who's been found liable for sexual assault. And don't forget, she said, Donald Trump left America to die during the COVID crisis because, she said, he wasn't up to the job. So naturally, campaigning in Atlanta on Monday, Donald Trump called Michelle Obama nasty. And then, because she's a woman, Trump did what he does best. He threatened her. This election will be won by suburban women, and I really think women respond favorably to this kind of talk.
Michelle Obama. I always tried to be so nice and respectful. Oh, she opened up a little bit of a box. She opened up a little bit of something. Oh, she was nasty. Ooh. Shouldn't be that way. That was a big mistake that she made.
Big mistake, threatening Michelle Obama, because Donald Trump, as we know, hates women. He's an adjudicated rapist. The Associated Press reports that Nikki Haley has reportedly offered to hit the trail for Donald Trump, but she's gotten no response from his campaign. Haley spoke on day 2 of the Republican National Convention. She was the last candidate standing during the Republican primary challenges. In many cases, she got 20% of the votes in primaries long after she dropped out of the race. You would think Donald Trump would want to court the candidate who got 20% of the Republican vote. But the Associated Press points out that despite challenging him in the primaries, Vivek Ramaswamy has been welcomed. Not Nikki Haley. Vivek Ramaswamy, who got no votes, has been welcomed into Trump's campaign. And it's because Vivek is a man willing to debase himself during the primaries. He never once said anything bad about Donald Trump, so he's welcomed into the fold. Nikki Haley served as Trump's ambassador to the United Nations, and Trump reportedly feels that her decision to run against him was an act of disloyalty. Donald Trump expects women to be loyal to him because the man who had unprotected sex with a porn star just weeks after Melania gave him a son, that man is loyal to his wives, all 3 of them who he's never cheated on. Trump will not forgive Nikki Haley, especially since she took out the knives early on in the campaign and dished it out, which Trump can't take. Early on in the campaign, she called Trump unhinged and diminished, and she warned he's lost a step since he first ran in 2016. She even suggested there should be a cognitive exam for anyone who wants to be president. In February of this year, she told NBC News, quote, "This is a fact. Trump is now saying things that don't make sense." She said that in February. He is now saying things that don't make sense. Now you've noticed it? AP reports that As early as January, Trump took to social media warning, quote, anybody that makes a contribution to Bird Brain, that would be Nikki Haley, anybody who makes a contribution to Bird Brain from this moment forth will be permanently barred from the MAGA camp. She's not welcome. Is this good politics? Nikki Haley didn't speak at Madison Square Garden on Sunday. And she hasn't spoken to Donald Trump since before the Republican convention. Trump has no interest in Nikki Haley, even though she endorsed him and could conceivably convince women who are just as stupid as Nikki Haley that Donald Trump is an ally. He's not interested. Here she is telling the truth about Donald Trump. Here she is last night on Fox News.
They were right to denounce the comedian. They need to go and tell Puerto Ricans how much, they do value them. They need to tell Latinos that, but they also need to look at how they're talking about women. I mean, this bromance and this masculinity stuff, I mean, it borders on edgy to the point that it's going to make women uncomfortable. You've got affiliated PACs that are doing commercials about calling Kamala the C word, or you had speakers at Madison Square Gardens, referring to her and her pimps. That is not the way to win women. That is not the way to win people who are concerned about Trump style.
Yeah. And he was never like this before. You've just discovered this. Well, exactly 1 week before the presidential election, Donald Trump's former campaign manager, Steve Bannon, was released from a federal prison in Danbury, Connecticut. Bannon discovered the incels, the women haters, back in 2016. Okay? But Nikki Haley just realized that this is a party of misogyny. Well, Steve Bannon served a 4-month sentence after he was found guilty of contempt of Congress for refusing to answer a subpoena from the January 6th committee. After he was released, Bannon told reporters, quote, if you're not prepared to be sent to a federal prison as a political prisoner, then you're not worthy to be in this moment and to step forward and to try to save your country. You're not a political prisoner. You're a criminal. He goes on to say, you have to understand they want to put you in prison. Not you. Me, not me, you. And they will put you in prison if you can't accept that. Then you don't know what they represent. He went on to say, they talk about President Trump. He's going to do this. He's going to do this. Look at what they've done. Yeah, look at what they've done. They locked me up. They locked me up all because I tried to overthrow the government of the United States and I wouldn't testify. And I ripped off, allegedly, the Build the Wall charity. And Donald Trump had to pardon me, but he's still being tried here in New York for that. 30 years in prison. 30 years in prison. That's the sentence handed down by a federal judge to David DePop after he was found guilty back in June. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name properly. He was found guilty back in June of attacking Paul Pelosi, former Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband, with a hammer. Pelosi's skull was cracked wide open and he was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. DePop was found guilty on several counts, including attempting to kidnap Nancy Pelosi and hold her hostage. Thankfully, she was not at home when he broke in. Paul Pelosi was attacked on October 28th, 2022. Pelosi's entire skull had to be removed and reshaped in a life-threatening operation. Donald Trump Jr., who blamed his father's shooting on the vitriol spewed by Democrats, tweeted this right after Paul Pelosi was attacked. It's a photograph of underwear and a hammer. Pelosi, if you remember, was in his underwear when he was attacked, and Don Jr. tweeted, got my Paul Pelosi costume ready, right as Paul Pelosi was coming out of surgery. Here is Donald Trump 11 months later speaking at the Republican convention in Anaheim, California.
And we'll stand up to crazy Nancy Pelosi, who ruined San Francisco. How's her husband doing, by the way? Anybody know? And she's against building a wall at our border, even though she has a wall around her house, which obviously didn't do a very good job.
And they're mad at Tony Hinchcliffe. Interesting. Trump delivered a speech Tuesday which was billed as a prebuttal to Kamala Harris's speech on the ellipse. Prebuttal, I think, is what Lindsey Graham calls foreplay. Trump delivered a prebuttal to Kamala Harris's speech on the ellipse. Trump accused her of decimating America's middle class and turning our once great country into a chaotic cesspool of squalor. And if I'm not mistaken, chaotic cesspool of squalor is how the Palm Beach health inspector recently described the kitchen at Mar-a-Lago. Former NBC chief marketing officer John Miller, who was in charge of publicity for The Apprentice, told Vanity Fair he regrets creating Trump's phony image as a successful businessman. Miller told Vanity Fair that Trump's behavior on the set of The Apprentice was, quote, racist and creepy. The article in Vanity Fair is written by Gabriel Sherman, and it's entitled Why an Apprentice Exec Broke His Silence About Donald Trump. Why? Because he would like to be the next dictator. Okay. Let's read this. This is from Gabe Sherman in Vanity Fair, October 29th, 1994. For former NBC chief marketing officer John Miller, this is a source of deep shame. His department created the advertorial myth of Trump's business prowess and promoted it to millions of Americans. The truth was that Trump went through multiple bankruptcies despite receiving hundreds of millions of dollars of his father's money. Miller believes that without The Apprentice, Trump would never have been in a position to run for president. Quote, he didn't have a real company. It was basically a loose collection of LLCs. They'd been bankrupt 4 times and twice more when we were filming the show. The Apprentice helped him survive that, Miller told me. Quote, people thought he would be a good president because I made him seem like a legitimate businessman. An absolute love fest. The love that was in that room. That's how Donald Trump described his big rally Sunday at Madison Square Garden. Trump added, it was breathtaking. Trump said, it literally took my breath away. Too bad his breath wasn't taken away 20 years ago. That way Melania wouldn't have needed a gas mask on their wedding night. As if Tony Hinchcliffe didn't do enough damage, Melania Trump undermined her husband's campaign on Tuesday when she appeared on Fox and Friends and told Fox viewers that her husband isn't Hitler. Damn, girl, that's not how you energize your husband's base. Here's Melania explaining her husband couldn't possibly be Hitler because, unlike Hitler, my husband, Donald Trump, has supporters, and Hitler didn't.
He's not Hitler, and all of his supporters, they're standing behind him because they want to see country successful, and we see what kind of support he has.
Mm-hmm. Hitler had no followers. That's the difference. Trump has followers. Hitler just seized power all by himself. There were no flunkies, no enablers or money-hungry former nude models willing to go along for the ride. It was just Adolf Hitler. Melania's citizenship, according to the Washington Post, was fast-tracked because she was given what is called, I'm not making this up, the Einstein visa. The Einstein visa. Einstein visas are reserved for immigrants with extraordinary ability and sustained national and international acclaim. Melania is a genius. In fact, she's such a genius. She's been living in America for 30 years, and she can barely speak English. Her syntax is all messed up because she's a genius. But if she says her husband isn't Hitler, who's to argue with a genius like Melania? I've been reading the wrong things lately. I've been obsessing on the Third Reich. I was reading a piece last night by Christopher Browning in next week's New York Review of Books. I love this. You should pick this up. It's a review of 3 books about Hitler's rise to power. And Christopher Browning writes over at the New York Review of Books, as Goebbels wrote in 1928, quote, "The big joke on democracy is that it gives its mortal enemies the tools to its own destruction." The big joke on democracy is that it gives its mortal enemies the tools to its own destruction. I'll be honest with you, I'm in a rage over this election, and to calm myself down, this is true. Before going to bed, I vacillate between old episodes of The West Wing and rereading The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. Seriously, it's like an hour of Jeb Bartlett, then an hour of Hitler. An hour of Jeb Bartlett, then an hour of Hitler. And then it dawns on me, Jeb Bartlett's son is Charlie Sheen. This is fiction. Hitler is real. Well, Trump isn't Hitler. Don't get ahead of yourself. Germany produced some of the greatest minds of the 20th century. We're not smart enough to produce a Hitler. Hitler is, and Trump, nothing in Hitler knew something about architecture, for example. Obviously, Trump doesn't. We're not talking Hitler. We're talking Alfredo Stroessner of Paraguay. That's who Trump is. Augusto Pinochet of Chile, Noriega or Trujillo from Panama, Somoza in Nicaragua. That's where we're heading if Donald Trump finds his way back into the Oval Office. Stop flattering yourself, America. We're not smart enough to produce a Hitler. Stop comparing Donald Trump to Hitler. It makes his threat seem fantastical. The Americas, North America, Central America, South America, we are no stranger to military strongmen. It's in our soil. Speaking of soil, the National Park Service has said it had to amend the permit for Kamala Harris's Tuesday night speech on the ellipse. They doubled the number of people allowed in from 20,000 to 40,000, but now it's estimated that at least 75,000 people attended last night's rally. It was a mob. 3,000 National Guard troops were deployed for fear that Harris's speech would end up inciting her supporters into storming a local Whole Foods. I'm kidding. Nobody stormed anything. They didn't storm the Capitol. They didn't take a crap in Statuary Hall. It was boring. Opening for Harris Tuesday night, Jennifer Lopez, who is of Puerto Rican descent, she said there's a floating morass of garbage in the middle of the ocean. It's called Staten Island. She didn't say that. That's For my listeners in New York, Staten Island is Trump country. There's your floating morass of garbage, Staten Island. Speaking in Baltimore on Tuesday, President Biden took exception to a Trump comedian at Sunday's Madison Square Garden rally calling Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage. Biden said, quote, "The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters." That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I like that. I like that. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro can't stop sounding like Barack Obama. And by that, I mean he threw Joe Biden under the bus. Asked to comment on our president's statement, Governor Shapiro said, quote, "I would never insult the good people of Pennsylvania or any Americans, even if they choose to support a candidate that I didn't support." This is not how you win elections. The garbage, they're not going to vote for Kamala Harris. Call them what they are. Biden later apologized for his comment. Here's the point. I have come to really love Joe Biden. I didn't want him to step aside, and I'm going to miss him, but Harris is clearly the better choice. President Biden is the most consequential president of my lifetime. Don't take my word for it. Bernie Sanders calls him the most progressive president since Franklin Roosevelt. But even before he lost a step, he has always been gaffe prone. And his White House and his campaign staff was always doing cleanup for him. It probably didn't help calling Trump's deplorables garbage. It probably wasn't the best thing to say. Here's my point. In the nearly 3 months she's been the nominee, Kamala Harris has never once had to apologize for something she said. How you campaign is a leading indicator of how you govern, and her campaign has been pitch perfect, with the candidate, Kamala Harris, not making one single mistake. Kamala Harris, unlike Donald Trump, is a black woman in America. She's not allowed to make mistakes. I said this on the last show. She is 1,000,000 times better than Donald Trump in every category. And yet, the election is kind of close. What does that tell you? San Juan's Archbishop Roberto O. Gonzalez Nieves called on Donald Trump to condemn and apologize for comedian Tony Hinchcliffe's joke at Sunday's Madison Square Garden rally, where Hinchcliffe called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage. But instead of apologizing, Donald Trump went on Sean Hannity and said this:
"I've done more for Puerto Rico than any president I think that's ever been president."
It's really hard to dignify that with anything other than this.
"I've done more for Puerto Rico than any president I think that's ever been president."
I really don't want to dignify this. You haven't done more for Puerto Rico than any other president. You've done more to Puerto Rico than any American president. During your first year in office, Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico and turned out to be the deadliest natural disaster to hit the United States in more than 100 years. Hurricane Maria killed 3,000 Puerto Ricans, and Trump refused help from neighboring island countries for fear of humiliation.
"I've done more for Puerto Rico than any president I think that's ever been president."
Trump refused to send his FEMA director to Puerto Rico, keeping him in Texas. Texas was still recovering from Hurricane Harvey, which hit a month earlier. I went over this on the last show. Texas was up and running by the time Maria hit Puerto Rico, and Puerto Rico was in desperate need of help, but Donald Trump told his FEMA director, no, you stay in Texas. They don't vote in Puerto Rico. They vote in Texas. You make sure everything's okay. Within 1 year of Hurricane Maria hitting, Puerto Rico's power was still not on, and FEMA rejected 3/4 of the applications for financial assistance in repairing damages to homes. This was worse than Katrina, but Puerto Ricans don't vote in presidential elections. It took the Biden administration to finally bring help to Puerto Rico, not Donald Trump.
I've done more for Puerto Rico than any president, I think, that's ever been president.
Then Donald Trump took a page from the Harry Truman playbook. He was on Sean Hannity's program last night, and Sean asked about the comedian at his rally, calling Puerto Rico a floating island of trash. And Donald Trump, like Harry Truman, said, the buck stops here. This is Donald Trump taking full responsibility, as he always does.
This comedian who made comments.
I have no idea who he is. Somebody said there was a comedian that joked about Puerto Rico or something, and I have no idea who he is. Never saw him, never heard of him.
I know nothing, I see nothing. And then Trump, who says he only surrounds himself with the best people. And that's why we should vote for him, because he's a successful businessman, and successful businessmen are all about accountability. Here he is showing why he is a strong leader.
But I don't know who it is. I don't even know who put him in.
Like COVID, it's not my fault. It's so unfair to blame me for the racism, sexism, and bigotry sprinkled throughout Sunday's rally at Madison Square Garden.
Who this comedian was, I have no idea.
I have no idea, because that's who you want in the Oval Office, someone who's constantly saying, I have no idea, it's not my fault. Then Sean Hannity asked if it was a good idea having a racist comedian open for him.
You wish he wasn't there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's a big deal or not, but I don't want anybody making nasty jokes or stupid jokes. I mean,
he doesn't want anybody making nasty jokes or stupid jokes, because that steps on Donald Trump's material. Carrot Top never has a prop act open for him, so why would Donald Trump have someone making stupid racist jokes before he goes on? Then Donald Trump told Sean Hannity how it happened.
I have no idea. They put a comedian in, which everybody does. You throw comedians in. You don't vet them and go crazy. It's nobody's fault.
It's nobody's fault. So unfair to blame me or anybody. Don't blame us. Everybody throws comedians in. That's what they do. Every political rally has comedians. Last night, Kamala had Anthony Jeselnik open for her on the Ellipse. He did that bit about setting fire to orphanages, and the crowd lapped it up because nobody vetted. It's just comedy. I love Anthony Jeselnik. But he's not opening for Kamala Harris. Donald Trump just said, nobody vetted Tony. Yes, they did, actually. Tony Hinchcliffe wanted to, this is according to the Daily Beast, Tony Hinchcliffe wanted to call Kamala Harris, I'm not making this up, wanted to call Kamala Harris the C word. Not the C word, the actual word. And the campaign said, maybe not. Which means they approved the other crap in his performance. The people who Trump surrounds himself with, his loyalists, his idiot minions, they had no idea allowing the words Puerto Rico is a floating island of garbage into the teleprompter. They had no idea that that's wrong. They really don't. And if you watched who else spoke, those are Trump's closest advisors. And they were saying pretty much the same things, calling Kamala, she has pimps, and Rudy was there, this guy Sid, I mean, it was They called Hillary Clinton a bitch. Who you saw, you didn't see Nikki Haley speaking at Madison Square Garden. Who Trump surrounds himself with, they're stupid, incompetent people. And this is why 1 million Americans died from COVID. Because it's not Donald Trump's fault. I don't know the guy. We didn't vet him, but that's okay. And why are you blaming me? This is a once in 100-year pandemic. How is it my fault? How is it my fault? It's so unfair. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced on Monday that Donald Trump promised in a second term he will give Robert F. Kennedy Jr. control of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The U.S. Department of Agriculture. So Bayer is about to become one of the 4 major food groups. The man eats bear. And he's going to be the guy who tells us not to get vaccinated and then denies he ever said, don't get vaccinated. This is the guy Donald Trump is going to put in charge of our health. Hey, it's not my fault. We don't vet people here. The Archbishop of Puerto Rico never got his apology from Donald Trump about Tony Hinchcliffe's joke. The Archbishop of Puerto Rico said, quote, I enjoy a good joke. However, humor has its limits. He added, Hinchcliffe's joke promoted hatred. The Archbishop said jokes should not insult or denigrate people. Well, with all due respect, Archbishop, if a joke doesn't insult or denigrate someone, then it's not a joke. A joke insults and denigrates the right people, especially bullies. The meaner, the more it hurts, the funnier it is. But who wants to be mean to Puerto Rico? Donald Trump and his supporters. That's who. Now, as I said, according to the Daily Beast, Tony was originally going to call Kamala Harris the C word, but the Trump campaign made him take out that quote-unquote joke. Elon Musk's super PAC is putting out an ad that calls Kamala Harris the C word. Nikki Haley mentioned it on Fox earlier. I played it earlier in the show. They have an ad. They're going, Kamala Harris is the C word. And the payoff at the end is she's a conservative. They think that's funny, that the C word is conservative. So Tony's act was vetted. It means the rest of Tony's jokes were perfectly fine with the Trump people. And Tony is refusing to back down, insisting it's just a joke. After being criticized by Coach Walsh, Tony took to social media and said it was time for Coach Walsh to, quote, change his tampon. See? Tony is making fun of Governor Walsh for putting tampons in the men's room to accommodate transgender people. Well, I like Tony. He's been on this show. He's very funny. There's a time and a place for his jokes. As I said earlier, that place would be 1933 Berlin. But those jokes in a nightclub, I'm a fan of Don Rickles, but not at Madison Square Garden opening for Donald Trump. And I'm kind of worried about Tony because I like him. He's done this show. He makes me laugh. Did it make me laugh Sunday night? And kind of disappointed. He's a Trump supporter. I think a lot less of him. I think a lot less of him for voting for Trump and putting his career on the line for Donald Trump. And I'm worried for Tony because I'm not sure this is going to blow over for him. Now, you might remember Tony got canceled 3 years ago for saying the worst things imaginable about Asians. It was on tape. It was pretty horrible. It wasn't funny. It was just shocking vitriol. And he got canceled. And by canceled, I mean he signed a deal with Netflix and now has one of the most popular podcasts out there. I mean, the First Amendment, boy, they're really punishing these edgelords. So what happened with Tony is attacking Asians made him stronger and wealthier. And I guess he thought Sunday, let's kick it up a notch and trash Puerto Ricans. This is what I'm worried about for Tony. This is what Trump said to Sean Hannity yesterday.
Probably he shouldn't have been there, yeah.
Okay. He probably admitted that Tony probably shouldn't have been there. Here's the thing about Tony's joke. This is the height of election season, and everyone is desperately looking for something to blow way out of proportion. Everybody, and they're looking for someone to blame, including Donald Trump. He's always looking for someone to blame. As I just showed you earlier, he never accepts responsibility. It's always somebody else's fault. Now, this race comes down to Pennsylvania's 19 electoral votes. And it turns out there are 500,000 Puerto Ricans who live in Pennsylvania. Let's be honest, there's no way Tony Hinchcliffe lost the election for Donald Trump. But Donald Trump is in the business of scapegoating. And this is why I'm worried for Tony. Tony's joke has survived the 24-hour news cycle. We're now going into the third day of this controversy. There's no end in sight to this because it's being exploited. The Harris campaign is using this moment. They're buying commercials using Tony's floating island of garbage joke as something that's illustrative of Donald Trump's attitude, not just towards Puerto Ricans, but Hispanics as well. So, if I were Tony, I think everybody's calling him. His friends are saying, Joe Rogan is probably saying, this is great. You're going to sell out arenas now. You're going to get more popular than ever. And I think that may be true. But there is a slight possibility that a week from tomorrow, Tony will be cited as the chief reason Donald Trump lost Pennsylvania. Now, again, Tony will not be the reason Trump lost, but our media and Republicans love a neat and simple answer. So, what happens if Tony becomes the scapegoat? What happens if enough Trump supporters, people who will believe absolutely anything, what happens if they become absolutely convinced that Trump would have won but for Tony's joke? What happens if some of them are convinced that Tony is a closeted Democrat who was sent to Madison Square Garden to tell that joke in order to destroy Donald Trump's chances of winning? Obviously, that's not true. But Trump supporters believe anything, especially conspiracies. They will believe anything, like Haitian immigrants stealing cats and dogs so they can eat them. Springfield has been inundated with death threats. State troopers have been ordered to stand guard in front of schools and municipal buildings, all because J.D. Vance and Donald Trump can't stop lying about Haitians who are living in Springfield eating cats and dogs. Business owners in Springfield, Republicans who defend the Haitians, are getting doxxed, swatted, death threats. There are tens of thousands of MAGA morons out there looking to swat or dox the guy who lost the election for Donald Trump, whether it's rooted in fact or conspiracy. Now, Trump is going to lose next week, and they will be looking for scapegoats. That's what MAGA does best. They feed off scapegoats, the blood of scapegoats, kind of like the 14 million undocumented Americans Trump is promising to deport. If I were Tony, I'd be terrified right now. I'd be as terrified as the 14 million undocumented Americans Trump is threatening to deport right now. They are terrified. But, hey, it's just a joke. I mean, if people start saying Tony Hinchcliffe was planted inside the Madison Square Garden rally to destroy Donald Trump's chances of winning, that's a joke. It's a conspiracy theory. MAGA morons know the difference between a joke and the truth. They don't believe conspiracy theories. I'm sure Tony Hinchcliffe is perfectly safe. Hate to break it to you, McDonald's, but Listeria is a Quarter Pounder's healthiest ingredient. Speaking in Saginaw, Michigan Tuesday, J.D. Vance said there's no reason to believe Donald Trump would show favor to Tesla over the big three automakers if he returned to the Oval Office. Of course not. Why would anyone think Donald Trump would show favoritism to the automaker who has just poured at least $150 million into his ground game? Trump wouldn't do something like that. Trump never used the Oval Office to reward his friends financially and punish his enemies. Never. He never punished Jeff Bezos, the owner of the Washington Post, even though the Post kept running a tally of all the lies that Donald Trump told. By the time Trump left office, the Post counted 43,000 lies that he had told. But Trump, he didn't deny Bezos a $10 billion cloud computing contract with the Pentagon to get even. Trump wouldn't do that. What kind of man do you think Donald Trump is? Meanwhile, you might remember that Jeff Bezos killed an editorial at the Washington Post that endorsed Kamala Harris. There's been outrage. A lot of the editors are quitting, and Washington Post cancellations hit 250,000. 10% of Washington Post subscribers have canceled their subscription to the Washington Post. That's according to The Guardian. So that's stupid. That's stupid. Do you think canceling Jeff Bezos is a horrible homunculus, but he did save the Washington Post. And it's really a great newspaper. Why? Because this prick, Jeff Bezos, doesn't need to make money. So he can afford to lose money on the Washington Post, and it does great work. He doesn't do great work. Now, canceling the Washington Post, do you really think you're punishing Jeff Bezos if the Washington Post goes out of business? He did this for power. It was a vanity project. yes, to look like he has influence in Washington, D.C., but you think you're putting a dent in Jeff Bezos's pocketbook by canceling your subscription to the Washington Post? No, you're just hurting a really good newspaper. We need the Washington Post. I'm surprised Washington Post subscribers are that short-sighted. You don't punish the Washington Post. You punish Amazon, not the Washington Post. I expect more from people who read the Washington Post. Well, I got to wrap it up. How we doing here? A new CNN poll of Arizona voters shows Donald Trump losing to Kamala Harris by 1 point. I want to talk about Arizona, okay? The new CNN poll shows Arizona women favor Harris by 16 percentage points, while Arizona men favor Trump by 14 points. Now, that 2-point gender gap suggests Harris can repeat Biden's 2020 Arizona win if there's a surge of female voters on Election Day. Will there be a surge of female voters? I think so. Republicans received tremendous backlash after passing a Civil War-era law criminalizing all abortions with no exceptions this year. Well, the Arizona State Supreme Court ruled in April that the law could be enforced. Trump and Republican Senate candidate Kari Lake immediately panicked and urged lawmakers to overturn that law, which they did. In May, the Arizona State Legislature voted to repeal the Civil War-era law, with 2 Republican state senators voting with Democrats. It was signed by the Democratic governor, and a 2002 statute banning abortion after 15 weeks kicked in this fall. Okay? So in Arizona right now, abortion is banned after 15 weeks. The Republicans think that's a compromise. But Democrats succeeded in getting Prop 139 on next week's ballot in Arizona. Prop 139 would amend Arizona's state constitution and would enshrine a woman's right to an abortion before viability. What is viability? It's the point at which a fetus can survive outside the womb, and it's roughly 24 weeks. So it's 15 weeks versus 24 weeks. Prop 139 is polling very well, and Politico reports that it's going to win next week. And Republicans keep insisting 15 weeks is a reasonable compromise. They're providing women enough time to decide whether they want to bring the fetus to term. Politico reports there's a fundraising disparity between the amendment's sponsor, Arizona for Abortion Access, and the opponents, who call themselves It Goes Too Far. It Goes Too Far only pulled in $1.3 million, as opposed to Arizona for Abortion Access raising $32.7 million. This is going to win. And fundraising is a good indicator of how a proposition is going to do. The latest A-plus polling averages show Trump beating Kamala Harris by 2 points in Arizona, but momentum favors Harris as she has climbed 0.4 of a percentage point in the past week. Plus, there's a marquee down-ballot Senate race in Arizona pitting Democratic Congressman Ruben Gallego against professional election denier Kari Lake. She lost her race for governor in 2022 and still refuses to concede despite losing every court case. Sound familiar? She recently defaulted on a defamation lawsuit filed by Republican Maricopa County Recorder Stephen Ricker. According to the suit, after losing in 2022, Lake at least 36 times accused Maricopa County Recorder, he's an election official, she accused Maricopa County Election Recorder Stephen Ricker of stuffing 300,000 ballots into the machines for her opponent. Sound familiar? According to the AP, Ricker was flooded with death threats and was forced to spend thousands of dollars on home security. Associated Press says the FBI stepped in, which led to a prosecution. NPR reported on July 31st that Ricker, a Republican elected in 2000, lost the primary by 9 points to State Representative Justin Heap, who had the backing of the Freedom Caucus. So, Real Clear polling averages show Ruben Gallego, the Democrat, beating Kari Lake by 6.3 percentage points. I want to show you something, okay? Because this is what we're up against. These Real Clear Politics is, it's kind of right-wing. They contaminate their polling averages with a lot of these Republican pollsters. But look at this. Look at this. That's on the far right. Gallego has been beating Lake, all blue. Look at that, 6 points. The average is 6 points. It just goes on and on and on. And if you track this is the Arizona Senate race. According to Real Clear Politics, look at this. He has been beating Kari Lake all year in the polling. There's never once been a poll that shows Kari Lake beating Ruben Gallego. These are all the polls that Real Clear Politics has put together for their averages. It is, if you look at the far right, the column that says spread, it's all blue, going back all the way to January. Look at this. All blue except one poll, a Remington Research poll in late June shows a tie. Look at this, and it goes on and on. Look at that. It goes all the way back to when? Where are we going? All the way to January. But she is going and is claiming voter fraud. See how it works? And Donald Trump posted this over at Truth Social, which I can't show you. Okay. He's already claiming voter fraud. He's already saying that they're destroying Trump ballots in Pennsylvania. A week from this morning, it's just going to start. It's just going to start. So be prepared. She's going to win. She's leading in the blue wall. She's going to win the popular vote, and she's going to win Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. That gets her to 270. But we know what Trump is like. Do I want to talk about Hitler? Here's the thing about Hitler, and Trump isn't Hitler. Here's the thing about Hitler. Von Papen, Hindenburg, Oscar Hindenburg, the son, they all thought they could control Hitler. Hitler became chancellor. By the way, he ran for president against Hindenburg, and after he lost, voter fraud. He called voter fraud. But when he didn't win the chancellorship. It was a coalition in the Reichstag, and the industrialists and the nationalists said, we can control Hitler. And they had no idea who Hitler was. Trump was elected president, unlike Hitler. He won the Electoral College. And we found out who he is. We saw his on January 6th, we saw who he is. And a lot of people are still voting for him. By the time the Germans realized who Hitler was, it was too late. We know who Donald Trump is. We know exactly who he is. The Germans they really do have plausible deniability. They had no idea how bad he was going to be. That's the difference between Trump and Hitler. Hitler wasn't elected. Trump was. We found out how bad Trump was. And some people want him back. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Again, don't flatter yourself, America. He is not Hitler. We're too stupid to produce Hitler. He's just, Pinochet. Please check out shopdavidfeldman.com. Buy my worst case scenario map. It's what else we got there? The Halloween scary stuff from my Halloween collection. That's the 2029 inaugural ball with Donald Trump and Melania. Don't they look happy? Donald Trump is an adjudicated rapist with 30 credible sexual assault. Oh, no, 31 now. 31 credible sexual assault allegations. You may want to pick up this Predator mug. And, come Thanksgiving, your MAGA moron cousins are going to be pretty upset. Buy them a MAGA hat, and they're too stupid. They won't see that it says low IQ individual in the back. And this is my favorite. It's Donald Trump in Edvard Munch's The Scream. I've been drinking from this for 3 months. Goes right into the dishwasher. It's really well made. And if you want to break my heart, pick up the I Hope You're in the Mood for Diarrhea Chef's Apron. This is my big seller over at shopdavidfeldman.com. Thank you to Mila and Bob, who keep the chat room civilized. I read all your comments. If I made any mistakes, please let me know in the comment section. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed. Please subscribe to my channel and my newsletter, and share this episode if you can. That's the best way. The only reason I have an audience is because of my audience. And Robert Smigel and Sam Cedar have helped me out, but I'm not part of some conglomerate or anything. It's my audience that is responsible for all this crap. So please share. No show tomorrow. I'll be back the day after at 2:30 a.m. And I don't know how many shows I'm going to do in the lead up to Election Day, and then this anyway. Take it easy. I'll leave you on this. Let's just calm down. It's all going to be okay. Just remember, let's watch a little CNN.
Stop doing.
You're
You
called
stop
an
saying-
anti-Semite. You've been called an anti-Semite more than anyone else at this table. And people will sit there and no, by me. I never called you an anti-Semite. I mean, I'm not sitting here saying
I'm a supporter of the Palestinians, so I'm used to it.
Yeah, well, I hope your beeper doesn't go off. The thing is that
you just say I should die?
You should not.
No, I
Did
said,
you just say I should be killed?
No, I did not
Live
say
on
that. I said,
CNN?
no, I did not say that.
Hold on.
Did your guest just say I
No,
should
I
be
did
killed
not.
on live TV?
I said I hope
Guys,
you're.
let me just stop.
You said you hope my beeper doesn't go off.
Because you said I'm a big
Stop
supporter
right now.
Of the Palestinians.
Hamas.
Guys, let me
said
stop.
Palestinians.
Are you?
Am I what? No, of course I'm not.
Palestinians are
Then
not.
I apologize.
Are you a
Then I
racist, violent
apologize.
person
Then I
inciting
apologize.
violence against me?
Ryan,
That's disgusting.
that is completely.
No, I apologize.
Good
that
job,
is
CNN. Let's
completely
have first
out
block
of
say the
pocket.
Muslim guy
You
should
know
be
that.
blown
Then I
up
apologize.
on
Then I
TV.
apologize.
Don't say then I apologize. You literally.
I thought he said
accused
Hamas.
him-
I apologize.
You didn't think I said Hamas.
No,
I
you
said I
didn't.
supported
Yes, I did.
Palestinian
Yes, I
rights.
did.
Why?
Yes,
Because
I
when
did.
you hear
What's funny
Palestinian,
is
you're
Rudy
Hamas.
Giuliani said this
No,
yesterday,
because-
so you're a great guest to
Listen.
be here
All
to
right,
defend
I
Rudy
told
Giuliani.
myself
Give me
I
one-
wasn't going to
give me-
entertain
give me one
nonsense
second.
today, and so at this point,
This is what we're in
I
now.
can't
This
do
is America in
Here's
2024.
what I will say.
Forget the
Here's what
racism.
That's right.
It's I should
That's
die.
right.
I didn't say that. You
You
should
said,
die.
what does beeper mean? Don't give me your
I
fake
did not say
ignorance.
you should
Guys,
die.
Why did you say
guys,
with my
give me-
beeper
give me
go
a-
off?
What did you mean?
What did you mean by the beeper?
So what did you mean?
What did you mean by the beeper? No, you didn't. You said, I hope your beeper doesn't go off.
Ryan, stop talking.
At least have the guts to support your racist comments.
Hang on.
I'm so sorry.
Let her bring it back.
This is why yesterday's rally was disgusting.
Don't call us Nazis, but I'm going to threaten the brown guy as a terrorist and kill him.
Because I didn't ever say Donald Trump was Hitler.
See, it's all going to be okay. We have reliable news organizations that are dedicated to reporting the news. They're not chasing eyeballs. These CNN makes millions and millions and millions of dollars, and they spend it on uncovering important information. Actually, CNN, their website is pretty good, in all fairness. It is. And don't cancel your Washington Post subscription. If you canceled, stop shopping at Amazon if you want to punish Jeff Bezos. But don't punish the Washington Post. Thank you all. I will see you in 48 hours. It's going to be okay. It is. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Watch The West Wing. Go watch old episodes of The West Wing. That's what I've been doing. Don't read the rise and fall of the Third Reich. Don't do it. Don't do it. Bye.